Hello guys and welcome back to Planet 40k. In this video we're going to be going through the new Pariah Nexus secondary deck, going through the secondary missions, all 18 of them, and how best to score them with Necron units. So stay tuned, we're going to be going through every single one. Now in a later video we're going to be going through the fixed missions in particularly and how best to pair them, but for this video we're just looking at scoring for now. Right, so there are 18 secondaries in this new deck. 6 of the secondaries are brand new, some of them have changed slightly, and some of them they've gone. From the Leviathan deck, they were, where were they? Investigate Signals has gone, Capture Enemy Outpost has gone, and a Tempting Target is gone. But as you can see on the left hand side of your screen here, that's the 18 we're going to go through today, starting us off with Area Denial. Now, Area Denial, no aircrafts anymore, which I don't think many of us use aircrafts anyway, so we weren't using our Night Scythes and Doom Scythes, but we can't be using them to score this objective anyway. You need to have one of your units within 3 inches of the centre of the battlefield and no enemy units also within 3 inches to score 2 VP, and if there's no enemy within 6 inches, you'll actually score 5 victory points. So the lower end of the scoring has gone from 3 to 2, so you can nab this turn 1 if you've got scout units such as your Tomb Blades and your Trike Stalkers. Maybe it's an infiltrators unit such as your flayed ones. You've also got the infiltrators enhancement if you're playing the Canoptic Corp, but not much has changed for that secondary. On to Assassination next. This is a fixed option. There are 9 fixed options in total if you are going to be playing fixed. This is one of them. Pretty much the same. You're scoring 4 victory points if you're playing fixed per character that you kill, and 5 if you're playing tactical. Now just be aware this is still done per character model and not character unit, so therefore if you're using the Silent King, the Tricomineers will also count as character models. So if you're going up against someone who's playing fixed and they've chosen Assassination against you and you've got your Silent King, that's going to be 4 victory points per Tricomineer and the Silent King as well. So what they likely will do is they'll likely let you reanimate those Mineers back in your command phase with reanimation protocols, and then keep removing them to keep scoring 4 victory points. So something to be aware of if you're using the Silent King. Now as for our Assassination scoring, you've still got the same old stuff like Death Marks with Precision. You've also got the Deceiver. Not many of us use the Deceiver, but that's got Precision as well. And of course Epic Challenge is the core rule stratagem, which is probably the best option if you're using like a Nightbringer or a Void Dragon perhaps. On to the third one, we've got Behind Enemy Lines, which is another fixed option, and it's the same as before except you've got the option of reshuffling this into the deck in turn 1 if you don't want to do it. So you're still scoring 3 victory points for 1 enemy unit in the enemy deployment zone, and if you've got 2 units there, you're going to be scoring 4. Now they have removed that bonus point for playing tactical, I believe, but 3 points for 1 unit in the enemy DZ I think is actually not bad. Just a single one, and you could, again, if you're playing fixed, you could probably pair this with something else and score quite nicely. Having just 1 unit like a Hexmark Destroyer in the enemy deployment zone on its own is still 15 points if you're managing to do that every turn. So yeah, Hexmark Destroyers, Death Marks again, both of them have got Deep Strike and are fairly cheap at the moment. Of course there will be a points alignment when this comes out, so things will change slightly, but at this moment from what we can see, Hexmarks, Death Marks, they're both decent for that. You've also got the Cosmic Precision stratagem if you're playing the Hypercrypt Legion. So you can literally throw anything in there with Deep Strike or something that's just Hypercrypt, Hyperphased even, and there's only a 3-inch restriction there. So you could literally have a single lone Locus Destroyer for 30 points, Hyperphase him off the board, bring him back in for 1 CP. It's a throwaway, it's just 30 points, you score behind enemy lines, let it die. So not a bad option there. Thankfully this one isn't an action secondary or anything like that, so even your Canoptic Scab Swarms and things can count towards it if you wished. Next we've got Bring It Down, which has got a bit of a difference to this one. It's also fixed, it's still fixed, but they've changed the way you're going to score this. So it's now done per unit and not done per model, which is good for the Silent King in this case because, oh, let's go through it. You're still scoring 2 victory points for every unit and an extra 2 victory points if the unit is 15 wounds or more, and then an additional 2 on top of that if the unit is 25 wounds or more. Now again, there's the option to discard it if your opponent has not got any eligible targets this time. So if there's no monsters, no vehicles, you can just get rid of it. Now let me just go back to that Silent King again, because if you are playing the Leviathan deck, which is the previous deck, and our opponent managed to kill their entire Silent King unit with his 2 Trichomaniers, they would have scored 4 victory points for the Silent King and 2 each for the Maniers, so that would have totaled 8 points. But with this new Pariah Nexus secondary card, it's actually less, because this is just a unit that has got 25 or more wounds in it. So they're going to score 2 to kill a standard unit, another 2 on top of that because it's 15 or more, and another 2 on top of that because it's 25 or more. That only totals 6 and not 8, so we're giving up less victory points if we were to lose a Silent King and his unit. Also, the Trichomaniers are not going to count as individuals, so that's also good as well because it's done by unit. That's good. As for the offensive side, I'll bring it down. We've got a number of units that can take out the big stuff. Locus Heavy Destroyers with the Gorse Destructors. Doomsday Arts can do the job. The numerous Catan Shards that we've got can do the job, especially the Void Dragon and the Nightbringer. If they get in, they can do all sorts of stuff. If you were playing fixed and you were selecting this, you're only really going to use this if your opponent's got lots of vehicles and monsters. Maybe against Imperial Knights, Chaos Knights, things like that. That's a good option there. Possibly Chaos Demons, Tyranids, they're normally monster heavy. Depends on how many there are, I suppose. But yeah, quite a lot of factions can do monster mash and vehicle spams. Right, on to the next one, Cleanse. Cleanse is another fixed one. This used to be one of my go-tos for fixed. It's a little bit less useful than it was. I mean, it is identical to Leviathan. It's 2 victory points for 1 objective outside your DZ, and 4 victory points if you cleanse 2 objectives outside your deployment zone. Of course, these are actions. Now, you can't be using the same unit to do 2 objective cleansings anymore, which I didn't actually know was a thing. So that was new to me. But we can't do it now anyway, so it's not that new anymore. I mean, actions are a huge thing this season. I mean, we spoke about the restrictions with actions in our previous video, which makes cleanse not as easily doable. For example, OC0 units aren't going to be doing cleanse anymore. Also, I think they added an additional bit of information where you can't be within engagement range at all. So in the previous video, I said big guns never tire. I don't think that's a thing either. So even your vehicles aren't going to be doing actions, aren't going to be doing cleanse if they're within engagement range. So that means cleanse is going to be a lot more difficult to do. You can't just be throwing a Triumph Stalker into the mix to fight and then do an action. That doesn't work anymore. Canoptic Race with the pistols aren't going to work anymore because they've removed that with a restriction there. Canoptic Scab Swarms we've already said about the 0 OC, so they can't be doing it. Really, you need to be doing cleanse on the cheap. Doing it every battle round can be hard with fixed. If you're doing tactical and it just comes up, you just sacrifice it and then score the victory points, right? But yeah, it was my go-to for fixed, not anymore. We've got a new one next, which is called Containment. So this is an action-based secondary again, wholly within 9 inches of the battlefield edge and outside your deployment zone. That's quite important there. And you can do this a number of times in a given turn, but they've got to be different edges. You can't do loads of actions on the same table edge. You've got to do it on different edges. You score 3 victory points for each edge that you contain to a maximum of 6. So basically you can do 2 edges. If you do 2 edges, not within your deployment zone, it's a nice 6 points. It's not a fixed secondary this time though, so you can't be selecting this as fixed. But if it does come up, I think it's fairly doable. You've got the entire, in a sense, you've got 4 edges to do it. We've got advantages such as hyperphasing, even standard strategic reserves, because you come on 6 inches from a table edge, and you could just literally come on and do the action, right? You've also got units that can ride up the flanks, like Tomb Blades. They can do it quite comfortably. I feel like it's a pretty easy one to do, especially that you've got to stay within 9 inches of a table edge. It's quite a large amount of space. Mid-game, it may be a bit more problematic when things start to pile into the centre. It pretty much has replaced Investigate Signals, which I'm kind of glad to see the back of. I didn't really like it when I pulled Investigate Signal time to time because it just wasn't something I like doing. Next, we've got a fixed one, which is Cull the Horde. This is a new one here. It's a new one. If you kill an infantry unit that's got a starting strength of 20 models or 25 wounds or more in the unit, you score 5 victory points. Now, leaders won't count towards this tally. It's purely just the bodyguard unit side of the unit. This one's a little bit on the stinky side because hordes aren't commonly used at the moment. It could all change. It won't come up an awful lot, but when it does, if you're going up against those Orc boys, I mean, even our Necron warriors, you can get them in units of 20, right? If you're taking Silvertide, for example, if you're taking, 4 units of 20 Necron warriors, your opponent may think, you know what, I might take that as a fixed option because that's 5 victory points for every unit they kill. If they just gun down your warriors, 20 points right there. Now there has been something mentioned from other YouTubers, I think only just yesterday in fact, where there's a bit of a weird, strange loophole with this, and they may patch this up, they may not, but you can actually select 19 Necron warriors for your unit size. On the app, when you're selecting your army units, it says, for example, Necron warriors, 10 warriors 100 points, at the moment that is, and 11 to 20 warriors is 200 points. So that's the important part, 11 to 20, so you can just select 19, and then that way your opponent isn't going to have a unit that's got 20 when they kill them. There are advantages and disadvantages to doing that though, because if you've got no eligible targets for this secondary for your opponent to score on, then they can actually just discard it. They can just discard it. So maybe it's okay to keep 1 or even 2 20-man units if you are going Silvertide. If you're going 3 or more, then I would consider dropping at least one of them to 19. Having 2 20s is okay because they're not going to pick fixed then. They're not going to go for it and go, aha, I can score 10 victory points over you. Let them have it. I'd rather they just did it. So it's only when you've got sort of the 15 to 20 victory points mark, that's when you need to be a bit more concerned. But in terms of offense for killing units that are in hordes, we've got our Locus heavy destroyers with the exterminator's weapons. You whack on a Locus Lord, 5+ critical hit rolls with sustained hits 1. Strength 6, -1 AP, 1 damage. It tears through anything. It's so good, especially hordes. It will just take them out. You only need 1 damage weapons here. I mean, you could also consider standard Space Marines, but they are, like, the Intercessors are only 2 wound models, so even a max unit of 10 of them is only 20 wounds. So unless it's some of the units that come in 10s but have 3 wounds, to make 30 wounds in total, they would be classed as a horde unit, according to this secondary. But yeah, you're not going to come up against this one that often. On to the next one, we've got Defend Stronghold. This one goes completely unchanged. 3 victory points to hold your own home objective. Can't be done in turn 1. Almost anything can do it within your list realistically. Most of the time it's our heavy options that are sitting on the home objective. Can uptick Doomstalkers, Locus Heavy Destroyers, Doomsday Arcs and so on. There's normally something sat there. So it's an easy one. It's an easy one to score, but it's only 3 victory points, and that's the best you can get out of it. If you've got enemy units that are occupying your home objective, then you just simply have to target them. There's not much more to say about it. It is what it is. On to Engage on All Fronts. It's another fixed option. It was fixed in the Leviathan. It's fixed now. 2 victory points for 3 quarters and 4 victory points for all 4 quarters. Now, we don't have that stupid 3-inch restriction on each quarter anymore. I hated that. That was so frustrating, so annoying. Used to always catch me out. That has gone. There is a restriction of 6 inches away from the centre of the battlefield, which is good. So there won't be any castling up in the centre of the battle and taking all 4 quarters. So that won't happen, which is good. Now, if you play the Hypercrypt Legion, you've got loads of ways to get there, realistically. Again, if you're using Hex Marks, Death Marks, they can keep popping in and out, into the right quarters that you need. You've also got the Transcendent Catan, who can do his advanced teleport move and then end up in another quarter. The Veil of Darkness from the Awakened Dynasty is another option, although that is a once per battle item. It might get you to where you want to be. Again, this isn't an action, so therefore you can use your Canoptic Scab Swarms if you wanted to, because there's no action taken here. Just got to be in a certain area and you score points. Established Locus is next. This is a new fixed option. I think this one is pretty much the new deployed teleport homers, which was another one of my go-tos. So we'll see how this fares. So this is an action in your opponent's deployment zone or 6 inches from the centre of the battlefield. So that part is the same as deploy homers. It's 2 victory points for the centre of the battlefield and 4 in your opponent's deployment zone. I believe it used to be 3 in the centre of the battlefield with the deploy homers, with the Leviathan GT. So you're scoring a little bit less, because even just taking the centre all game in the previous deck, you could score 15 points. So now they're saying if you've got 2 points for every round in the centre, it's only going to max at 10. So they are trying to push you into the opponent's deployment zone. It pairs quite nicely with behind enemy lines, which may even be my new combo, you know. There are a few others that I'm thinking about. Again, we're looking at Hexmark Destroyers and Deathmarks, again, because they've got the Deep Strike ability. If you're playing Hypercrypt, you can pull them up, pick them down, all that stuff. Quite easy to score with our units that got Deep Strike. Triton Praetorians is another one, but I don't tend to use them. If you like them, that's another option there. Again, you've got the Cosmic Precision Stratagem. in the Hypercrypt Legion, so pretty much anything can go there if you've hyperphased it. Locus Destroyers, 30 points again. Maybe that'll be a thing now, you know, 30-point Locus Destroyers just to throw them around. This one, though, is an action. You've got to be aware of that, so Canoptic Scarab Swarms are not going to do it, and anything within engagement range is also not going to be able to do it. So that's established Locus. Next, we've got one of the unchanged secondaries, which is Extend Battle Lines. It's still 5 EP for holding your own deployment zone and a single No Man's Land objective, or 2 victory points if you've only got 1 unit left and you're holding 1 in the No Man's Land. I mean, Wraiths like to tangle in the No Man's Land. I know they're not doing as much as they were because the pistols have been a little bit, you know, they've really crapped on the pistols. But Canoptic Wraiths could do it if you're still liking those Canoptic Wraiths, if you're playing the Canoptic Court, that is, as well. Warriors, Immortals, they're also good. They've got a lot of OC, so they're more ideal, especially battle line units now. I know that's to do with actions, I'm not talking about actions here, but battle line units in this deck I think are going to be quite important, so maybe you're thinking about getting some Immortals in. Marked for Death is a new one, so your opponent picks 3 of their units on the battlefield, and at the end of either player's turn, if only one of those units are dead, then the person with that card is scoring 5 victory points. Quite a cool one. Ideally, you want this mid-game, you don't want this first turn, because it makes it a lot more difficult. There's normally things hidden within cover. Doing damage in melee probably isn't going to happen. So realistically, you're only doing it at range at that point. It still can be done. Locus Destroyers, I think, are a very good option because they can shoot through virtually anything. Even the big stuff, the small stuff, the medium stuff, they can do it. It all depends on what the 3 selected targets are, of course, and what the faction is. There's also something to note here, because in the secondary card, it says when they're scoring 5 victory points when 1 or more of the selected units were destroyed, and then in brackets, or removed from the battlefield for any other reason this turn. What you don't want to be selecting is units that you are planning on putting in the hyperphase, in Hypercrypt. If you are playing the Hypercrypt Legion, that is. If you've got Hexmart Destroyer that you're planning on hyperphasing in this turn, don't select it, because if you pull it off the battlefield, it's left the battlefield. Instant 5 points for your opponent. So just watch out for that one. It is literally leaving the battlefield for any reason. On to No Prisoners next. 2 victory points per every unit killed. It's capped at 5 victory points. That's pretty much unchanged. Obviously this one's opponent dependent and faction dependent. Some opponents have got loads of tanks, some of them play Horde, some of them have min-sized units, have loads of inruns and feel no pain saves. It's all very faction dependent and player dependent as well. I think the more balanced you are with your list, the easier it may be, because you've got an opportunity to use a bit of everything to be able to kill a bit of everything. However, if you've not put all your eggs in one basket, like if you've not got 9 Locus Heavy Destroyers, for example, and you're going up against a load of tanks, and you've not got those Heavy Destroyers, then you're going to struggle with, let's say if you've only got 3, you might struggle, you might not, you might still manage to score. So it's kind of a bit of both, it's a bit of swings and roundabouts with this one. You can go lopsided with your list and have a good chance of removing something. You can go lopsided with your list and have no chance of removing something. You can also go balanced and have a bit of a chance. So yeah, it's very hit and miss. Pick off the weakest units that your opponent has and then yeah, get the card done is what I'd say. Overwhelming Force is also another unchanged option. 3 victory points for each enemy unit that you kill within range of an objective marker to a max of 5 victory points. Very similar to No Prisoners, you can't really predict it. It's all about killing units and you don't know what the units are until you come up against them, of course. I mean, we've got a lot of killer units like, for example, the Scorpion Destroyers I've got on the screen now. You could use Rapid Ingress, move and charge through terrain, get in the mix, chop a unit up that's on an objective, and away they go. Score the card, get it done. Recover Assets, it's a new one, it's another fixed option. I think this one may be my go-to, you know. I think this one might be the best one I feel, for me personally. Everyone's different. So what you do with this card is 2 or more units can do an action that are wholly within different zones of the battlefield. So you've got your own deployment zone, you've got the No Man's Land, and then you've got your opponent's deployment zone. That's the 3 zones. And if you do an action in 2 of them, you are going to be scoring, let me check, 2 zones scores you 3 victory points, and all 3 zones scores you 6 victory points, which is a lot. Now your opponent can counter this, they can counter it, so it's quite risky because you don't score it at the end of your turn, it's done at the end of your opponent's turn. So they can go, you know what, everything goes after that certain unit and then it removes your action from actually completing. So yeah, it's quite a risky one. I mean, if you're going second, then there's less of a risk in turn 5 because nothing can counter it because it happens at the end of the game as well. So turn 5, you get into 3 zones, bosh, 6 points, nice. Ideally, you want to make use of large terrain, stick a hex mark behind a giant ruin so it can't be targeted. It can't be targeted anyway because of lone operative, and likely not be able to be charged unless something is nearby. You've got the free Overwatch stratagem as well with your Hexmark destroyers. The Hypercrypt will help, but you need something ideally survivable, not too expensive, which is quite difficult to find both. And don't forget it is an action, so you're going to be giving up your shooting and your charging if you do actually do it. Now what I'm aiming to do is sort of the first 3 turns, I'm aiming to just go for 2 zones. My deployment zone and the no man's land, that's fairly easy. You just got to step out of your own deployment zone and do one inside, and then that will score you 3. If you do that for 3 turns, that's already 9 points, and then I'd hope to late game throw everything in. The other option though is throwaway units. We've said it a few times in this video already. You can get your Locus Destroyer, a single Locus Destroyer, because you can get 3 of them, 3 single ones for 30 points each. Hold them back, pull them off with the Hypercrypt Legion, Hyperphase, throw them back in with Cosmic Precision or Strategic Reserves. You can just come in from the side of the board. Obviously turn 2 there are restrictions in place. But Cosmic Precision if you need it. Make sure there is a ruin though. You can't be doing it with no protection whatsoever because you will just get shot and die. So you do need something, or you can do it something that is a bit more tankier. Like, I'm trying to think off the top of my head what can do it. An Annihilation Barge that's cheap and tanky. They might find a use now because they've got the 4+ invulnerable save. They've still got a decent enough toughness, and they're only like, they're not much more than a Hexmark Destroyer in fact, are they? How much are Annihilation Barges nowadays? It's been that long since I've used one, you know, because they've been so bad. So I'm going to have to actually check. An Annihilation Barge at this moment is 115. And obviously the Hexmark Destroyer at this moment is 70. So 45 points more. But that Annihilation Barge is toughness 8, 9 wounds with a 4+ invulnerable save. So it's like, well, I say likely to survive. If everything goes for it, then it's not, is it? It's not. No, you know what? Hexmark Destroyers are probably your best bet with Lone Operative, and you can only get 3 of them. Luminous also has Lone Operative, but is he going to get there? Maybe. Feel No Pain as well. He might be actually a decent option for it. But yeah, that's recover assets. We've got another new one, which is Sabotage. Not fixed this time, so you can't select this fix, but it will come up if you're playing tactical. 1 unit outside your deployment zone, start an action, and it finishes at the end of your opponent's next turn. So very similar to recover assets. Your opponent's got a way of countering it, or it can end at the end of the battle, which if you're going second, it will be helpful turn 5. So you complete the action in the no man's land for 3 victory points, and in your opponent's deployment zone for 6, which is quite nice. Again, Hexmark Destroy. Anything with Deep Strike. I've put Praetorians on the screen because I've kind of gone over Hexmarks a little bit often now. They seem a little bit overpowered now. They're a sort of an S tier auto include for me. But try Praetorians, Death Marks. They could also do it. Get in your opponent's deployment zone when you're playing tactical, that is. 6 victory points. But they've got to survive. That's the only problem with this. They've got to survive. Secure no man's land. This is unchanged. It's the same as it was. 2 victory points for controlling 1 objective in the no man's land, or 5 victory points for controlling 2. Fairly straightforward, quite simple. Lich Guard, nice and easy to bunker down with their invulnerable saves, with the shields. But yeah, it's not that difficult to score no man's land. Whenever you pick that card playing tactical, you kind of get a smile on your face because you know that's an easy one. It should be doable. Storm hostile objective, a fixed option still. Similar rules as the Leviathan deck. 4 victory points for controlling a marker that your opponent held at the start of the turn, or 4 victory points if you control just 1 marker and your opponent doesn't hold any. Now the only change to this is the fact that you can reshuffle this back into the deck in turn 1 if you wanted to. Now I like using units that can move after shooting to score this objective. You've got your Chronomancer and your Tomb Blades in particular. They've got the shoot and then move ability. So what I like to do, I like to use Cosmic Precision, again Hypercrypt. Make sure you're not too far away from an actual objective marker. You're then going to take your shots, at the unit that's on the objective, so hopefully you're narrowing models down to give you more space, and their OCs being lowered as well. And then you simply do your extra movement and step onto the objective, hopefully with more OC than they have, and that way you will storm hostile objective. So yeah, that is a fixed option. I tend to be a little bit iffy with this one as a fixed option. I don't like it because it doesn't necessarily go well with your primary scoring, because if you're not on the primaries when the command phase happens, then you're not scoring primary points. I mean, you can, you've only got to do this with one, I suppose, but what I tend to find is I'm not on the objectives in the command phase and I'm trying to steal them, but I've missed the primary scoring, so it's sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So that is the 18 secondary missions from the new Pariah Nexus deck. But guys, thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next one.